The SDGs and the private sector. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are a government initiative, right? They're for governments to promote, and international organizations and business should just go about doing its business. Wrong. Really, really wrong. How can you achieve something so important, so historic, without the driver of the world's economies, without the private sector? And the private sector isn't going to get involved in the SDGs and supporting governments to move forward SDG agendas and supporting the United Nations to move forward SDG agendas. The private sector isn't going to get involved just to do good, just because it feels good. They're getting involved because it makes business sense. The reality is almost every decent, well-run private sector firm is already having a big impact on the Sustainable Development Goals. If you list the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and how they deal with livelihoods and poverty and health and education and environment and partnerships, you'll see that businesses of all types are already hitting them. They're already helping to move those agendas forward. Maybe there's room to be more efficient, but where there's really room to be more efficient is in governments engaging with the private sector and creating a shared agenda and working together to drive the SDG agenda forward. Private sector and businesses often need some education around how to understand what they're already doing, how to do more of it, how to optimize it, how to report on it. And I found that governments are really on an important learning curve on how to effectively engage the private sector in SDG activities. I see in country after country that I work in where the Ministry of Education is sitting there, and the private sector, mining, oil and gas, construction, services, spending tens of millions of dollars a year of their social responsibility budgets on education-related activities, on schools, on public education, on K-12 education, on post-secondary and tertiary education, that is aligned perfectly or nearly perfectly or relatively aligned with the mission and purpose of the Ministry of Education. And yet so often in country after country, the two operate almost in silos. There's not that interaction between them. Or you'll see where, even if there is interaction, the government itself doesn't have a strategy on how to effectively engage the private sector. And this is happening, many government departments are starting to integrate the UN Sustainable Development Goals into their operational plans, into their mission, into their vision, into their purpose. But they're operating in an area where the private sector is also doing this, and so many are missing that piece that says, how do we engage the private sector in working with us to support our contribution to the SDGs? And it's not the private sector supporting it by writing a check or supporting it. It's how can the private sector, through what it's already doing, contribute to the mission and purpose and goals and objectives of your ministry, whether it's the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Industry, or you name it. There's an overlap. And if you leave it to chance, if you leave that collaboration and engagement between government and the private sector on the SDGs, if you leave that to chance, it may happen. It won't happen nearly as efficiently. You won't have near the value. You won't make near the progress. You won't have near the impact as if you consciously figure out a strategy on engagement and then move that forward.